So this segment will undoubtedly be my favorite from the show this week because I get to talk about a new poll from Harvard-Harris that vindicates every single thing progressive political commentators like myself have been saying about the Democratic Party establishment over the course of the last 2 years. That they are so out of touch, that they moved so far to the right that they no longer appeal to their left-wing base. They've become too conservative, and certainly the Democratic Party's leadership is completely out of touch. And also, in addition to the Harvard-Harris poll, one of Trump's pollsters said what we've also been saying: Bernie would have won. So Andrew Joyce of Mike.com explains a new Harvard-Harris poll finds that the majority of Democrats and the overwhelming majority of young Democrats believe that the party is insufficiently to the left. 52% of Democrats polled say that they support movements within the Democratic Party to take it even further to the left and oppose the current Democratic leaders. The strongest support for moving the party left came from young Democrats, with 69% of Democrats ages 18 to 34 saying they support those left movements. The poll also found that Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders continues his streak as the country's most popular politician, with the highest favorables of any candidate among all respondents, as well as among key subsets including African Americans, Hispanic people, and young people. Meanwhile, nearly two-thirds of respondents felt that the current investigations into President Donald Trump's ties to Russia are hurting the country more than helping. Only 51% of Democrats felt the investigation was helping, with the other 49% arguing it was hurting. Those results, taken together, appear to bolster the left's broad critique of the Democratic Party, which accuses the party of focusing too much on feuding with Trump and not enough on building a coherent vision for the left. The poll comes out at a time when the National Democratic Party is plagued by infighting over its direction and future. A recent staff shakeup at the Democratic National Committee have left many in the Bernie wing of the party feeling as though the party leadership is determined to excise them from positions of power. Trump, for his part, remains significantly unfavorable, tied with his former presidential rival, Hillary Clinton, for the highest unfavorable rate in the country. But Trump's net favorable rating is actually higher than Clinton's, as well as several other high-profile politicians, including Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and Nancy Pelosi. So it's almost as if the respondents in this poll watched the Humanist Report, but I'm not really saying anything that insightful or informative. I think a lot of the analyses that I provide about the Democratic Party, they're just common sense, even though I'd like to toot my own horn and say that I have just this special insight into what average voters want. I'm an average voter. I'm not an elite. So I know what we want, and it's common sense. We want you to look out for us and not your donors. But before we get further into this poll, Jacqueline Thompson of The Hill explains Tony Fabrizio said at a Harvard University Institute of Politics event Monday that Sanders could have prevailed where Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton did not. There's no question that if it had been anybody other than Clinton or anybody other than Trump, that race would not have been as close as it was either way, Fabrizio said. It would not have been. When asked about what would happen during a Sanders-Trump matchup, Fabrizio replied, "I think Sanders beats Trump. I think Sanders would have had the ability to reach a lot of the less than college-educated, low-income white voters," he added. So we have polls and pollsters telling us that, one, Bernie would have won, that the Democratic Party is too right-wing, and that Trump-Russia is hurting the country, all this hysteria is hurting the country more than helping. I mean, do we not get to take this moment to gloat? Do we not get to say, "I told you so"? Because Bernie Sanders supporters have been saying these things, but the Democratic Party, they plug their ears and they pretend like we don't exist. And they try to smear us when we say these things and say that we are racist. So when we oppose someone in DNC leadership like Donna Brazile, they say it's because we don't like women of color. When we come out against Hillary Clinton because she supported the TPP, she voted for the Iraq War and the Patriot Act, it's because she's a woman and we're not comfortable with a woman being in the White House. So these are diversion tactics. They use identity politics to the detriment of progressives in the progressive movement, but what they don't realize is that they are making themselves look foolish and they're hurting the party long term, because I hate to tell you guys this, but us younger voters, the 69% that say they support movements like Justice Democrats that push the party to the left, we're the future of the party. We're going to take over one day, whether you like it or not. And all you are doing in purging progressives and shutting off progressive challenges and their access to NGP van, all you're doing is delaying the inevitable at this point, because these polls show that what we're saying, it resonates with voters. And I love how they also vindicate us when it comes to what we've been saying about Bernie Sanders. What do we hear from Joy Reid? Well, Bernie Sanders, he's only about the white working class, and that's his only base. But what did they say here? Bernie Sanders has the highest favorables of any candidate among all respondents, as well as among key subsets, including African Americans, Hispanic, and young people. So this is in addition to another poll that showed that Bernie Sanders actually polls the highest among women of color. So everything that the Democratic Party establishment has been saying to you has been wrong. Anything these overpaid Democratic strategists and consultants have been saying has been wrong. So in trying to shut us out of the party, all you are doing is hurting yourselves. Yes, it is the case that currently you're hurting progressives. You're making it more likely that Republicans will win and that Donald Trump will defeat a Democratic primary challenger or a Democratic nominee in 2020. And you're just hurting yourself. We have the winning strategy. We have the winning message. We know what it takes. We are the antidote to Donald Trump. Left-wing populism is the only antidote that can defeat right-wing extremism. We've seen this not just in the US, but in the UK and in countries across the world. There's a reason why we see a lot of Bernie Sanders type figures popping up in other countries as a response to economic austerity, as a response to a right-wing extremist demagogue like Donald Trump. It's because that's the only thing that will resonate with people. A left-winger like Bernie Sanders who comes along and says, look, the system is rigged, you're being taken advantage of, and it's time that we look out for the many rather than the few, the rich few. And that's a message that resonates with everyone on the left and the right. So these polls, it's more than about gloating and saying we were right, you were wrong. Hopefully, these polls actually have an impact. You read these polls if you are a strategist and you see that, yeah, what you're doing, this corruption, shutting out progressives, that's not going to work long term. It might work in the short term, but long term, we're coming for you. 69% of the party of young Democrats, the future liberals, we're coming for you. And best believe that at the end of the day, progressivism will win. And that's going to happen regardless if the party tries to resist it or not.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.